So welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success stories series of interviews, where we discuss with local business leaders their backgrounds, their successes and their challenges, and what's really driving them forwards. And this morning, I'm delighted that we have with us Phil Shackleton, who's co-founder at Mix. So firstly, Phil, please introduce yourself and Mix to the audience, what you do and how you help people.
Good morning. Yeah. Hi, Chris. And thanks for inviting me along today. It's a pleasure to be here. So yeah, my name's Phil Shackleton. I'm co-founder of a digital agency called Mixed. I suppose in summary, we design and build websites, intranets, microsites, campaign sites, that kind of thing. But we do that specifically for the public sector.
Yes.
So yeah, over the last 19 years, we established back in 2004. And we've kind of grown organically in that time, but the more work we do in that area, the more specialists we've become. And right now, it's a key part of our drive really is designing and building sites for clients like the NHS and local government and things like that as well. So yeah, it's basically designing and building websites.
Wowzers, but in a particular sector which must be, I'm sure, A, interesting and B, rewarding, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, my background sort of originated, before starting Mix, my business partner and I both worked at a much larger agency in Leeds. And during that period, we worked with quite a large number of government clients, and we were designing and building, very much information-led sites, and clients like Department for Work and Pensions and things. So really big, thousands and thousands of pages. And it's that kind of background, when you're building a website with so many pages, how you structure the content, how you design and develop it, kind of paved the way for what we did, or what we established with Mix, basically, that we wanted to bring all of that agency, big agency experience. It was a company at the time, 200 plus people. Wow. And we were instrumental in the digital side, which, going back to that period of time, was quite a new thing still.
Yeah.
And, we had that sort of background behind us, and it just gave us that, perfect setting really to sort of set Mixed up on our own. And, one of the key things that we wanted to do was bring the big agency background and the big agency experience, but be able to deliver that on a much more personal, more intimate kind of way of dealing with it. And I think that anyone that's out there that's, worked in big organizations will know that classic mentality of the account managers and the account directors that kind of get in the way of work being done. And I mean, to sort of say that in all due respect, it's so big that the designers didn't actually get to talk to to the actual client.
Yes.
And it was one of the sort of problems that we felt we could address. And when we set Mixed up, it was like, well, let's bring all of that background, let's deliver what we do, but let's just do it on a much smaller scale where we can be hands-on right from day one. And that's true. That's it's how we operate today. So myself and Mike, the other partner, I kind of head up what we call UX, or user experience side of design.
Yep.
And that's like the strategy part, where we're, working out what the priorities are, who the audience groups are, what we're doing, why we're doing it. Whereas Mike, my business partner, heads up the creative side.
Right.
And we kind of, we are very much hands-on. We do the work. Even today, we've grown to an agency now of 17 people full time.
Wow.
It's a really important part of how we operate, that we're just as much part of it as we were on day one.
Yep.
The difference is there's just a few more of us now. So
yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I find a common thing people talk about is we don't want to get too big because we don't want to change the culture. And my typical response to that is, great businesses grow because of their culture, not despite it. So actually leading with culture, values, vision, we can grow to any size and still be the same business. Small doesn't mean great culture. It just means small and great culture, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think, touching on culture there and values and sort of, our priorities. Again, having come from that sort of big agency background, it was
Yes,
always something, when we set Mixed Up, that we wanted to do things right from day one.
great.
Um, I think when you work for a really big company, you get used to the sort of, processes, standard operating procedures, all the things that you kind of come to expect with a big agency or a big company.
Yeah,
But when there's two of you, it seems a bit ridiculous to go, you know what, we're going to write a policy for this. We're sat in the room, chatting things over together. I even remember, like, in the first days of setting Mixed Up, we had a little office, and we had a typical setup with a phone, but it was a handhold phone, and we used to sort of put people on hold and then throw the phone across the room to my business partner, and yeah, so the sort of the fun and the sort of joys of how we operated, but we took things really seriously, and
yes,
we developed a set of processes. We developed a way of doing things, that paved the way for how we are today. And
brilliant.
I think, looking back now, without that structure, without that, thinking, we wouldn't have been able to do what we've done. It's easy to reflect on that now, but at the time, it just seemed like a waste of time. When there was two of you
Yeah,
and all the rest of it. But the values are a really important part of who we are today. And for us, it's about people.
yeah,
The nature of the work that we do. So a sort of typical client for us is designing a website for like an NHS trust, your local hospital, for example.
yep,
Um, and it's obviously intended to do a job. If you're visiting hospital for whatever reason, there's going to be information that you need, whether that's just simply where to park your car, or what facilities are out there when you get there, or
yes,
if you're going in for a procedure. You might need to know what to take with you, or what's going to happen, and so on.
yep,
So yeah, the work that we do really touches the lives of people across the country in a way that is really kind of really important to what
yeah,
how we operate and what we actually do as a company. And that sort of that people orientated approach. We talk about user-centered design a lot in the nature of the work we do.
yep,
And that's key to it. That
yeah,
at the heart of whatever it is we do, whether that's designing a homepage for a website, or just developing how we do something internally,
yeah,
that it's the people that are the focus to it, and that carries right through in the values that we have as a company.
brilliant. Brilliant. And clearly those have helped you be successful and grown. But what are, looking back, what are some of the biggest issues or challenges that you've had to overcome over the last 19 years?
Yeah, so we're into our 20th year,
Brilliant.
coming into our 20th year now. And yeah, I mean, one of the key things for us was we've seen other agencies, grow and explode in size, and then scale back, and some of them unfortunately are not around today.
Yeah,
And I think one of the things that we really wanted to do from day one was just not rush and take our time. And there's been opportunities along that path when it would have been really easy just to say, right, okay, let's get some investment, or let's just invest in the team and grow, grow overnight. There's been points where we could have doubled in size very, very easily, and the carrot was there. The sort of the projects and the opportunities were there, and it's always just felt safer and
yeah,
more fun as a
yeah,
company to do things slowly. And I don't regret that at all. I think that's been one of the best decisions we've ever made. And, sort of challenges along the way. I mean, there's always carrots on an end of a stick, aren't there? And I think one of the things we have learned is that sometimes it's very easy to diversify a little bit too much.
yeah,
The internet, digital's changed a lot over the last 19 years. And there's been opportunities when we've kind of had a little bit of skill set in house. Maybe we're using, contractors or something at the time. And we've been tempted to just, take on something that really perhaps truth be known, wasn't really our core. And I think that's one of the sort of biggest challenges we've faced is sometimes it's very difficult to say, no, that's not what we do.
Yeah.
But it's something we've been keen to do. And, today, we position ourselves as a user-centered design or digital agency.
Yep.
And very clear about what area we specialize in and what work we actually do. And
Yeah.
at the same time, what we don't do, we're very open with clients about, that's not our game, but we can work with someone that can do that.
Yeah.
And we can refer you to someone. And I think sometimes you can be quite afraid to say that because you just think that the client's going to, sort of pack the bags and go off to the other agency that can do all of it. Whereas, what sets us apart is we are specialists at what we do. And there aren't many other agencies out there that can say that we
Yeah.
just do this and that's all that we do.
I think I mean I totally get that, but I think clients respect and value both honesty and authenticity. This is who we are. This is what we do. We want to help you if we can do this, but if it's something else, then it is better we find you or help you find, or we help you find somebody that can do that thing for you. I mean, I think the thing I always makes me laugh is I can still think back into my first business and thinking about clients that were clearly not going to be great, prospects that were definitely not going to be great clients, but we still worked hard to bring them on. And the carnage that created, I always say a crappy prospect is going to be a crappy client. They don't become a great client just because they pay us some money. And it's being honest with ourselves and with them to say, look, this isn't going to work because we're not right for you, and ultimately you're not right for us.
Yeah, and it's kind of touches on one of the key things that we have learned, and that is about the relationships and partnerships that we develop with our customers. That we're not in this for the short game, and sometimes we've had conversations internally about budgets and things when we're not looking at just that initial outlay from a client to build a website. This is more about the long-term goals and from our point of view what we'll achieve over a longer period of time.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say most of the sort of clients we work with tend to be on sort of 3, 5 or 7 year contracts now. And having that, it's something the public sector are doing anyway because they want that long-term
Yes.
commitment, and that comes at a good discounted price as well. But it's good for us. We want to build a relationship, and we want to be more than just an agency that does what you ask. We want to be proactive and be able to advise and guide our clients. And I think it's easy to forget that we are the expert. This is what we do. And despite working, the kind of people we work with often communication teams in big organizations, but actually they tend to sort of boil down to 1 or 2 people, and they might be experts in marketing or strategy and things like that, but actually what skills do they actually have of building websites? And often there's a gap there. And a big part of where we succeed in sort of nurturing relationships is that hands-on approach. Nothing's ever too much, and it's something that we're constantly saying to our team is like we've always got to be striving for that ultimate experience, and that's it. It is about an experience. You forget that a client's buying a website, and there is a product at the end of it.
Yes.
But it's the experience that they go through in delivery and in us delivering that makes the the impression and where we present the value as well.
Brilliant. Wonderful. Sounds absolutely fantastic. And looking at business, obviously we talked about the challenges. What are some of the big learnings you've had about running and growing a business?
Yeah, I mean, challenges and learning, I think, are very much the same thing, actually.
Yes, I agree.
Many respects. I think, like I said, we've talked about, being very selective about what we do.
Yep.
And, all too often, we do find that with the work that we go after. We need to just be true to our hearts a little
Yep.
bit on
Yep.
I'm very focused around that. But in 19 years, we're very. I mean, it's pretty truthful to say that we haven't really, gone out and marketed ourselves, like cold called or anything like that. We don't need to do that. We've built a reputation,
Yep.
and people know about us in the industry, and
Yep.
one project leads to another. So,
Brilliant.
kind of the focus of the kind of work we do in like NHS trusts, once we win one sort of client, one organization, often the neighborhood, like the neighboring
Yes.
trusts will often, be in touch in due course. So
Brilliant.
I think going back to the question though, learnings, I mean, I think one of the key things for me is it's about people.
Yep.
And I almost like I wish I'd known or understood this better when we set up, that
Yep.
we've always focused on surrounding ourselves with the best people.
Great.
And I think that's one of the key things. The more we've done and the more we've learned, the more we've grown, the more we can do that. The more we can afford to do that.
Yep.
But I almost going back now, I wish we'd took a bit more of a gamble in that right at the early stages of the process. And I can't say that enough. It is about surrounding yourself with the best people in doing what you do, and collaboration. So I think obviously coming through COVID and all the rest of it, it's probably one of the biggest challenges we face right now. Is we've always operated to some degree as a remote company. Digital, I think, goes back a long way in terms of having free, kind of remote working members
Yes.
of staff.
Yes.
But coming out of COVID, it was a bit of an irony, really, that we'd been building up to establish our biggest office, a proper design studio right in the heart of Leeds, 1,000 square feet. It's absolutely beautiful, amazing place right above the railway station.
Brilliant.
And then COVID hit.
Yeah.
So since then, we probably have one or two people that go in on a regular basis, and the rest of us do work, in a remote first sort of fashion now.
Yes.
And that collaboration is challenging. And with the more established members of the team, I think everyone kind of understands, and we know each other really well.
Yeah.
But with the newer members of the team, it's not that they're not pulling the weight or anything like that. It's just you forget and you just take it for granted that they don't have that connection that we once did have in the office.
Yes.
And that's an area that we've focused on over the last few years. Is what can we do? And it's not necessarily a bad thing either. Don't get me wrong. I think the more I think about it, is that a lot of people, certainly our team, favor the remote working environment.
Yep.
It works really well. It's flexible, all of those kind of benefits. But you just have to work a bit harder for those, that valuable contact time, and
Yes.
think about how you deliver that in terms of the team and how we operate. And
Yeah.
I wouldn't say we've solved it. It's an ongoing thing. We're learning all the time, and
Yep.
we've introduced some method, processes, and we've introduced tools to support the remote working.
Yep.
And some work and some don't. But we're just learning from it. And I think but that collaboration is key. And one thing I wouldn't want to sort of take away, learning over the last 19 years is, like I say, it's about people, and it's about how you work together, and what you can do as a team to deliver the best solution possible.
Wonderful. And you're probably where we're a business coaching organization. I'm keen to know who the best coaches you've worked with, whether it's in business, sport, life in general. Who've been the key influences for you?
Okay, so I think there's a couple of scenarios personally. So I'm a big cyclist. I've been a big sort of sports sort of person all my life, really. And I played squash competitively when I was younger. And I had a coach back in, when, top 16, 17, really my first introduction to coaching, I suppose. So I was playing for Yorkshire at the time in squash, and I used to travel to this guy. He was like one of the England squad coaches, and um, just his approach to like kind of planning, goal setting, and
Yep.
milestones. Um, and our team, will obviously recognize the fact that it's something I do talk a lot about. That it's a bit of a cliche, isn't it? Your sort of 3 years, 5-year goals. Write them down. But it was something that particular coach,
Brilliant.
did with me on a very regular basis. And it wasn't just about thinking it through and saying, "Oh, well, this time next year I want to have done this." He used to make me write it down, and
Great.
that commitment to actually putting pen on paper, and pinning it to a notice board or your fridge or whatever it was, so you just
Brilliant.
see it all the time. And I think that's something I've taken through life, really, that the goal setting is just as important as the actual achievement at the end of it.
Yep.
And certainly in my sporting kind of life, it's the goals and the milestones, that the achievements that you make every day that you almost don't recognize. Those are the important ones. And when you get to the final success at the end of it, sometimes it can feel a little bit like a right, kind of what's next kind of scenario, because you've already passed it, you've already done it. It's the little celebrations that you make along the way. So yeah, I think writing goals down and being very clear with yourself and honest with yourself as well, about what you're doing and
Yeah.
why you're doing it. The other memory that I can think of that I thought was quite a useful story to say was like motivation and what's driving you.
Yes.
It's something we do talk a lot about with we work a lot with students and universities, and have always supported and kind of been keen to give back. We run a student academy called Work in the Web,
Right.
which it's kind of like being this concept of giving students in digital careers the opportunity to kind of learn everything that they don't learn at university in 3 days, basically. And we just invest the whole team in supporting it. And selfishly, we recruit out of it, of course.
Brilliant.
But it's just a fantastic opportunity to work with young people. But I suppose one of the key things for me there, and the connection to education, we're going way back to school, at the point when I was like thinking about what did I want to do. I had an art teacher, and I was particularly good at design. So we did,
Right.
back in the day, we did design, CDT, craft design technology. And we also did art, and I was really good at the design technology part. Kind of really good. I just loved it, absolutely loved it. And I was really good with the computer. My art was never my strongest point. I could draw, but I wasn't a great drawer. I wasn't a great artist. And I remember saying this to my art teacher, had asked her, what have you decided to do? And I told him that I'd applied to go to art school. And he kind of looked at me and it's like, what? You're not going to get in there. And to this day, I remember that conversation. And fast forward a few years, so I went and did art school. I went on, did graphic design and all the rest of it. And I graduated, and I was offered a job with the art school. So out of my entire year, I was picked out, and they used to offer like an art director's role
Wow.
for a 1-year post, basically.
Yes.
And I got picked for that year. And kind of a few months down the line, I was walking down the corridors of the art school, and I happened to bump into my old art teacher from school. And the look on his face, it was just like the best moment in the world. It was like, what are you doing here? And I was like, well, I'm the art director of the art school. And he just couldn't believe it. I mean, he was such a nice guy. There was no sort of negativity in it. It was a passing comment that he made.
Yes.
one afternoon, it probably never even thought twice about what he'd said to me that day. But to me, that was the motivation, and it has driven
Well,
me all the way through that, something, someone telling that you can't do something has made me do something.
yeah.
And, the power of that, the power of what is driving you is quite an important part of it.
It's fascinating because, as you said, it was that particular comment was probably never meant to be so significant, but it just teaches, I think, how significant what we say is to other people,
Yeah,
especially younger people. I think it's really, really key.
yeah, and it's an interesting comment because we do a lot of work now with universities and art schools and things, and we're keen to kind of give back, and we do get asked a lot about university and should I do a degree and not, and it's a really tricky question to answer that in
Yeah,
terms of someone starting out, and I wouldn't ever want to put someone off. It's kind of my sort of stock answer is, well, when it comes to employing, in the nature of the work we do, I really don't care whether you've got a degree or not.
great.
It's about what you can do and the kind of
Yeah,
person you are, and what's driving you and your motivation. Um, it's almost more important as to how much do you actually want this,
yeah,
and if you can show me that, that's what's going to excite me about you.
yes,
Um, but at the same time, the degree to an individual is a life-changing thing. So I would never say don't do it. I think it obviously is down to the individual as to what's right for them,
yeah.
um, to actually make that decision. But yeah, you're right. I think a passing comment can have quite long reaching kind of a point beyond that, isn't it, really?
Really can. I mean, and that being a great example that you remember, even you said it, to this day, exactly what was said to you and how it was said to you. Well, I was actually going to say, do you have any other favorite quotes or sayings? I guess that saying was probably the most impactful on you. But is there anything you find yourself saying a lot, that you fall back on difficult or challenging times, especially?
Yeah. I think again, a lot of this from the sort of sports that I do. So I mentioned earlier that a big cyclist nowadays kind of got into sort of road racing, road cycling, and more recently now into ultra distance
Oh
racing
wow,
and things. Um, and one of the sort of challenges you face, doing a very long distance, sort of 600 miles over a short period of time,
my goodness.
is that commitment to do it, and that again, it's the drive to do something like that. And when you think about these things, you know that it's going to be tough.
Yes,
People ask me like, why are you doing that? And I don't honestly know. It's just this desire to achieve something, and at the same time to challenge yourself. So
brilliant.
I think going back and answering your question there, I think it's about commitment. And like I said, when we look at potential employees, it's one of the key things that I look for.
Yeah,
Is not qualifications and even skill sets. It's like, how committed are you? How much do you really want to do this?
yeah.
Because that is worth far more than, we can teach you stuff and we can guide you through it, but if you don't actually really want to do this, then you know
Couldn't agree more.
it's it's not the same. So yeah, I think it's, for me, it's about, and there's loads of say quotes and things around that, but it's, if you're going to make a decision to do something, then yeah, you do it. Yeah,
Give it
or at
100.
least commit to it. Yeah.
It's really interesting to say that. I've been talking about recruiting and recruitment the last few days with a number of different businesses, and one of the principles we operate is traditional recruitment is recruiting on experience or qualification, but typically we then sack people on attitude. That's the reason we sack people, not on the qualification experience. So why not cut to the chase and recruit on attitude primarily over experience? If you've got both,
Yeah.
wonderful. Or obviously a base level of experience or qualification is important in certain industries, but above that, it's all about the attitude, the commitment, the drive. Do I believe that you really want to do this? And but unfortunately, traditional recruitment is the opposite. It's just like, look at loads of CVs and pick the 3 or 4 people that got the most qualifications, and we'll talk to them. Seems nuts.
yeah, it is the wrong way around, and you're absolutely right.
Yeah,
I would totally agree. Yeah, I mean, again, it was one of those things when you're coming into an industry or sector. Um, I always look at what I did, and was heavily guided by different people at the time. But I was very fortunate when I was at school that there was a local design studio in the same village as the school where I went to school, and um, the guy that owned it was a parent of a child in the school, and I managed to get to go and do work experience, one summer with that company. Um, and I never left them. So I did 2 weeks of work experience, and then I just kept going back. And
brilliant.
I'd just rock up, in the afternoon after school. I'd just go and literally open the door and walk in, and like, hey, what's going on? And they would give me jobs to do, and I'd do my own homework and my own design work and stuff on their
Brilliant.
computers and things. Just being around people, and I think for someone starting out in a career, no matter what industry you're in, you know, you might say, well, that's just impossible. How do you do that? But there's always a way. Find the right people, and
Yep.
put yourself in that position where you will be with them and can spend time with them, and
Yeah.
be the annoying work experience kid that I was. Because that's what starts the pathway, really. That's the drive again.
Absolutely.
I think that's really important, just to be around people that you want
Yes.
to do.
They're inspire us. 100%. I couldn't agree more. And what would you say, Phil, that you've learned about yourself throughout your journey so far?
Um, I think, I mean, we touched on some of these points already. I think it's the commitment thing.
Yeah.
Um, and it's funny, I was talking to a friend the other day. Actually, I've got a son now that's 10 years old, and like me, he's quite sporty and does different things. But like anyone, there'll be a day when he just doesn't want to do something. And I've tried to sort of coach him and explain him, my views on this. And you could look at it and say it's quite a harsh view, but in a way that I've been brought up, and the direction and the guidance and the mentoring that I've had, it's always been like an on or off. Like, when you're faced with, do you want to do something? There isn't like an in the middle state. There isn't a like, oh, I'll give it a try. It's,
Brilliant.
you're either doing it or you're not.
Brilliant.
And that commitment to put yourself there and say, well, yeah, I'm going to do that. I might not succeed at doing it, whatever it is that you're doing, but the mindset of actually saying to yourself, I'm going to do it. That's what I'm going to commit to. And I
Brilliant.
think that's really important, that you don't go into things in life and just be a bit sort of willy-nilly either way. It doesn't really matter, because if you do, I feel that you're setting yourself up to fail straight away. I think it. And don't get me wrong, in my sporting career and in professional as well, failing is part of it,
Yes.
and that'll never go away. And
No.
you've got to be able to sort of chalk those things up, and you pin them over here and move on, and
Yeah.
on to the next thing. Without the failure, you wouldn't get the success.
Yes.
But it's the commitment at the beginning that's the important, that you want to achieve something.
Brilliant.
And that could be anything from a long bike ride to starting a business and turning over £1 million, whatever it may be.
Absolutely. No, it's interesting. The things you're saying. I'm going to an event this evening with Kevin Sinfield, who I don't know if you're familiar with, but he played for Leeds Rhinos, and he's done a number of endurance events. He's starting tomorrow. He's doing 7, so it's 7 ultra marathons in 7 days in 7 cities.
Fantastic.
And starting in Headingley, and he's going to York tomorrow. And we've got a small event. It's a bit of a Q&A, and I am quite keen to ask him, as you said, when he's done. This is about a 4th event he's done that's been very high endurance, and the first one, you sort of, I imagine you're going in with a slight level of ignorance of how challenging it's going to be, but this is his 4th one, and you said something similar, that knowing what it's going to be like, it's how you prep mentally for that, I would think, is quite challenging to know that it's going to be as tough as it is.
Yeah, very true. And I think you can mentally prepare for these things. And again, I know it's a bit of a cliche to say this, but it's very true in business as well, that you're sort of always thinking these scenarios through. So when they happen, you're not completely like starstruck and panicked.
Right.
Your brain goes into overdrive. So if it's on a an ultra bike ride or something, having a mechanical failure is like the worst thing that can happen. But if you've considered that and planned for it and prepared for it,
Right.
I don't mean physically, I mean like actually
Yes.
thinking it through, how you want to react and how you want to behave in that situation, it's almost becomes second nature then, because
Yeah.
it's not a surprise. It's not that fight or flight mode.
Yes.
It's activated. You've got control of it, or at least the beginnings of it, and you can think a bit more rationally. And I think again, I do apply that my sort of sports mentality to the way we
Yeah.
operate as a professional, designer and the business. And I think again, that part of that is really key. That you're always thinking these things through and have that ability to sort of step away from stuff and actually see it and
Yeah.
see it for what it is.
But yeah, take that step back and look and see what it looks like. Yeah, it's fascinating actually. That just that whole as you say, that ability to look at things in a certain way and deal with it. I interviewed a guy. I'm trying to think of his name right now, and he works with a lot of high performance people, and he often tests things in himself to see what happens. And I remember him saying it was something like this endurance test of running for 24 hours or something like that. It was just something really, what felt really crazy to do. But he
Yeah.
actively made it a loop where every couple of hours he came past his home.
It makes it hard then to
And
quit.
he wanted to see
Yeah.
how his brain
Yeah.
activated. So look, you could just stop now, go and get a nice cup of tea and go to bed, or you could
Yeah.
keep going. And he actively wanted to see how he would manage that. And it was really fascinating because I mean, that was the last thing. If I was ever going to commit to something like this, I would. That was the last place I would want to be anywhere near. But just fascinating. I loved trying to understand a bit more about the mindset of high endurance in athletes. I guess in work, I've probably met and done a bit of that myself, but not at a physical level.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that all of these things have in common is that mindset.
Yes.
That ability to look at something, and analyze it and then make an informed decision on it. And that's true in sport as it is in business as well. So yeah, I mean, I can imagine running past your home every time would just be, yeah, that's more not just a temptation. That's just cruel.
I think it is. I mean, he was self-cruelty, but he actively wanted to see what that would be like, and I just found that absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
Coming back to work and business, what does the future look like for you guys, and what challenges do you think you might face, if any?
Yeah. Well, the future's exciting. I think we've got to a point now where we've just come into our 20th year, so we'll celebrate 20 years next
Brilliant.
September. And we've grown to the biggest we've ever been. So there's 17 full-time staff right now.
Fabulous.
And we've always said we didn't want to explode and kind of grow ridiculously over time. I think our ideal, which we ironically said on day one, was a company of around sort of 20, 25 people.
Yeah.
And we were very close to that. We're at that tipping point, almost, as you get to a certain point where you don't just need one extra body, you need a couple more designers, and then you need another, 2 or 3 developers to support that. And you need more project managers and so on. So
yes, of course.
I kind of fully expect where we are now that is the next step for us. That's certainly what we want. We don't ever pretend or expect to become the 50-100 person company that Mike and I have previously worked at. We've been there and we've seen that and we didn't like it.
Yeah.
It's kind of, it doesn't offer the same that we can
Yes.
get out of a small company.
Yes.
I think that's something, when people that have worked for us over the years, and sometimes we've attracted people that have come from big agencies, and
Yep.
equally we've lost people that have gone from us to a bigger agency.
Yep.
Mm, depending where you are in your career, that can be appealing or not, but I think
Yes. Yeah.
for what we want, we want that closeness. We want a really close-knit team. We want to drive forward and innovate in what we're doing,
Yep.
and be known as the expert, be the one in the UK when people talk about websites for public sector, that they think of us. And we're certainly close to it. We've got some competition that are out there, but there isn't really anyone that's doing what we do at the level in terms of speciality, and that's what sets us apart, really.
Brilliant.
So yeah, I think the next couple of years, really, for us, it's that drive. And what I would like to do as part of that is be able, as the sort of success with more clients, increased revenue and all the rest of it, is to be able to invest that back into the team and back into what we do, so that it sounds a bit of a cliche again to say this, but to be able to have more time to do what we do. And
Brilliant.
as we've grown, we've had growing sort of pains, challenges, that we're taking on more work, and we're not sort of bringing more people in until we really need them. Managing sort of cash flows and things in that way. So it's easy to lose sight of what it is that we do.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that, I want to realign ourselves in the next couple of years, that, to give ourselves more time to innovate and
Yeah.
get back the fun that comes out of doing that. And it's not that we don't, at the moment, it's just that you become, like any company, I think you become very, very driven by, the processes of it. And,
Yeah.
for us, that's the difference, is that we don't want to be that 100-person company. We want to be more selective. We want to be, we want to be choosing the clients, not the clients choosing us. And,
Yeah.
once we get to that certain point, I think it'll be certainly much easier for us to do that.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Yeah. Well, obviously, I'm A, sure you'll get there, and B, it seems like it's going to be a very exciting journey for the next stage. I mean, it's we were talking about celebrating before we started, and I don't know if you know the stats, Phil, but they're really good. In your case, especially, to know which, I mean, and you're way past this, but unfortunately, 80% of businesses will fail in the first 5 years of operation. That's just a very unfortunate stat, and unfortunately, then of the 20% that survive, another 80% will fail in the following 5 years. So just to get to 10 years, you're in the top 4% of businesses. So to get to 20 years, I honestly don't know the stats on that, but it's a very, very tiny percent of businesses. So that is definitely, I'd suggest, something worth celebrating when you do.
Yeah, well, we've got some plans. That's for sure. Yeah, we're definitely looking at that. And there's been, we're, as a sort of sector, as a digital agency, there's always been a lot of focus on, like employee benefits and things like that. We've always tried hard to have really good salaries and have that endless list of benefits. But that one thing at the top of the list that we talked about many years ago is the 4-day week. And it's been raised a few times, and Mike and I are certainly not against that. We'd all relish that opportunity, wouldn't we? But it's certainly something that we want to work to, and I think it actually is achievable, given the sort of speciality of what we do and the nature of it.
Yep.
And like everything in life, it's good to have a balance. So I think it's important to, as we grow and as we develop in that way, that we can at the same time, afford ourselves that luxury. Not to work twice as many hours on the 4 days that you work, but to actually do it in a way that's, kind of, sustainable over time.
Well, I actually work with somebody that's implemented the 4-day week, and she believes that they're actually more effective. They're delivering more. So they exactly that. It was there was no intention to squeeze, 5 days, hours into 4 days. It was 4 days work, but she believes they're getting more out the 4 days than they were getting out the 5. So if it's useful to have a chat with her at some point, obviously introduce her. But I personally believe, and I do a lot of this, especially with business owners, is that we should have more than enough time to focus on growth, not even just enough or not enough. It's more than it's that. But it's so crazy because I say to people, what would it feel like if you actually had enough time to be able to just sit back in your chair, put your hands, feet on the desk, and think? Because that's the most valuable thing we can do for our business. Yet it tends to be the last thing we do in our business. It's the least prioritized. But that thinking time, that strategy, that planning, the goal setting you mentioned earlier is so important. But yeah, we're all in, often operating in demand mode for a lot of the period of time. But I guess that's part of business life.
I think it's just that balance, isn't it? And number one throughout everything we've done is that we want to have fun doing what we do. And I think it's hard. It's sometimes very easy to forget that, work becomes work and you become so drilled with what you're doing as a business owner, perhaps even more so. You never switch off. I think my team certainly joke about, when I'm away, I'm never away. And, Phil's always listening. And that's true. I'm obsessed with the business because I'm driven and very passionate about it. And I want it to work. And that's important. But I also acknowledge and I want that balance. And, Mike and I want the 4-day week just as much as our team do. And
brilliant.
I think it's something we can all work hard to achieve, and maybe next year is the year to do it.
Yeah, it's definitely doable because I think most organizations are operating at a lower efficiency than they could do. So improving efficiency means we can get way more done in less time, and it's definitely doable. Well, Phil, it's been absolutely fascinating to talk to you, and thank you so much for the insights into your business and where you're going. And it'd be great to come back in another 6-12 months and just see where we are and how close we are to those goals. And just before we end it, if anyone that's watching that's interested in connecting or contacting you or Mixed, what would be the best way to do that?
You can find us online, Mixed, mixd.co.uk. It's probably the easiest way, and got contact details and things on there. So
brilliant. Well, once again, thanks so much for your time. It's been absolutely fascinating.
All right, thank you very much.
Cheers.